Hey guys, and welcome back. Tonight's topic is going to be hopefully something a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's really not that serious at the end of the day, but it's something that bugs me endlessly. So if you ever find yourself on a little bit of a self-improvement kick, or like I am, you're obsessing over the idea of being a Renaissance man, inevitably you start to, well, go to YouTube usually, and you look for videos to inspire you, give you some idea of what direction to take initially. And when you do that, you get force-fed, typically videos about productivity systems. Depending on your field of study, for example, I usually get videos about how to draw, how to sketch, sketchbook tours, things like that. But yeah, I'd say more often than not, you'll get things about how to properly schedule your time. Here are all the productivity apps that you want to use, all that kind of stuff. But inevitably, if you're in my space, you will get served up what I have dubbed notebook corn. So notebook corn comes in a couple of varieties. It's either shilling essentially for a specific notebook brand, or it's finding creative ways to waste your time with systems that needlessly complicate what should be a fairly simple affair. And I want to take a little time tonight to talk briefly about both. I swear to God, this is not going to be a 40-minute one like the last video, but I want to provide my thoughts on both genres of notebook corn, and I want to perhaps provide a simple solution, a simple way forward for you guys, so you only have to watch one video about this subject and you can just move on and actually, accomplish things. So, actually, you know what, let's start with that. So to save you the time, if you want to just focus on why you need to keep a notebook, it is very simple. The thoughts that are in your head matter. They are important if you want to act upon them, if you want to build upon them, if you want to check yourself and make sure that the thoughts and actions later that manifest that you're putting out into the world are worthwhile, are intelligent, it is really handy to put them on paper. Sometimes you also just need to get something out of your head so you can move on, right? Like, I was complaining to myself the other day that, my budget has to be a little tight this month because I'm going on a trip and it's tax season here in Canada. So generally speaking, you have to tighten the purse strings and, hey, okay, what can I do with, not too much access to new materials? I got that thought out of my head and I haven't really had to think about it since, because I kind of committed it to memory. I said, okay, well, I'm not going to buy too much. I'll make do with what I have. Here are some creative ways to stretch the materials I have. Fantastic, done. For some of you, it may be a simple matter of keeping track of your affairs. What's my week going to look like? When do I have to study? When do I have to go work out? When do I have an appointment with somebody? Again, super simple stuff. Or maybe if you're veering into the more creative side of things, you need to keep a sketchbook and maybe you want to keep some notes within that as well. Fine, fantastic. Right? There are plenty of valid uses for notebooks, and the thing is, there aren't really any rules. I know this is earth-shattering, but there really aren't. At the end of the day, this is your property. These are your notes, right? You can write them however you want. The important thing is to get them down on paper and occasionally go back and reference them, right? Now, the thing about notebook corn of the two varieties is that it kind of traps you in this cycle of endless consumerism instead of focusing on the thing that matters, which is, again, getting your thoughts on paper and then eventually making them manifest. So, to talk about our two varieties here, the first one, of course, being what I think are basically very... not so subtle, actually, not so subtle campaigns for specific notebook brands. So if you go on YouTube, for example, there is a whole genre of videos about field notes. Field notes are everywhere. It seems like every other video is somebody shilling field notes and telling you that, oh, these are the perfect size, and here's my system for field notes, and here's why you need to have one in every color. And it just gets to be too much. Now, that particular form factor for a notebook is great, sure. I personally like Moleskines. I like this specific size because it's just big enough to fill up one page with how big my handwriting is and how, I guess, long my thoughts usually are. I think in about a page at a time, so whatever that says about me. But Moleskine actually has a smaller version that's comparable to what Field Notes offers. But, in that case, it was smaller stuff. I was keeping to-dos, for example, maybe just very short notes about a specific project I was working on, throwing together a shopping list, what pencils or pens did I need to buy or anything like that. But I really didn't complicate it, and I didn't care. And in fact, I've had many small form notebooks over the years. It's not about field notes, it's just about whatever happens to work for you, right? Whatever's available at the time. And the thing with field notes specifically is that because they've become such a fad, they are ridiculously expensive. Now, I understand I'm throwing stones in a glass house here to an extent because, yes, Moleskine is, I guess you could consider it a luxury brand, but I'm going to share a little secret with you. I never buy these at full price. I always wait for these things to go on sale. I always buy the 3-packs. I always buy in bulk as well. I have dozens of these around, and I have never paid full price for them. And it's just because, again, I like the form factor, the paper quality is good enough, and that's it. But these field notes guys, it's almost a cult. They have you convinced that just because you're writing in a field notes notebook that your ideas are somehow going to be more profound. There's even one channel, his name escapes me, and that's probably for the best because I don't want to throw too much shade. But he talked about wanting to have a journaling habit, but how he really needed to have a field notes sketchbook, and how he would drive around the particular locality, and he'd look desperately, but they just didn't have it. Any stationery store he went to, they had plenty of good serviceable notebooks, but he had to get the field notes. And when he was finally in a different country, he was able to get his hands on them, and he tried to evangelize to the store clerk about them. My brother in Christ, all due respect, it's a notebook. Don't worry about the branding on the front, right? And in fact, that's one thing I really hate about the field notes genre specifically. At the end of the day, it is just about an advertisement. It's about putting it out there that you're part of this bigger club. You're part of this field notes community. When, again, that's not the point. The point is to record your thoughts. That's it, right? It's just about whatever works for your specific need. Now, I'm not a zealot about the Moleskines, for example. I think these are a fantastic product. Again, they're just big enough for me, right? They take the ink very well. It barely bleeds through, and they're actually pretty sturdy. I have a few here. These are from about 10, 12 years back, up until a few years ago when I took a little bit of a pause from journaling. But these things last. I mean, they're definitely scuffed up. The paper, it has some wear and tear. There are some stains on there, but these things hold. I haven't had a signature fall out of any of them, which is a testament to how decent they are. But I don't always use them. For example, I'm studying Korean right now, and I think considering how long my lessons are and how much material I need to study, I need more real estate on my pages. So I'm using these notebooks from Muji. And, again, I buy them specifically because they're cheap, they're big enough, and the paper quality is just good enough that it doesn't necessarily bleed through, right? I can scribble things out, which I often have to do as I'm learning Korean, and they take pretty well. So it's not a necessity to stick to one thing specifically, right? So that kind of genre of notebook corn, avoid it like the plague. Just get whatever works for you, whatever you can afford, and just start writing. The second genre, and this is the one that really grinds my gears, the second genre of notebook corn is the one that's dedicated to wasting your time with needlessly convoluted systems. So, bullet journals, commonplace books, Eros journals. It's, again, you're just trying to write your thoughts down, so you don't necessarily need to make it a thing. There is no canon of notebooks. There's no rule about how you want to keep these. It's just whatever works for you. Usually, I'll just write, longhand, no particular thing, just big paragraphs. Sometimes maybe I'll be studying, right? I was reviewing my ancient Greek alphabet the other day, and hey, this is the form factor I happen to take. Fantastic. There's no rule. I don't have to throw out the notebook because I changed how I was laying things out, right? Sometimes I'll do bullet lists because I'm saying, hey, here are some things I need to pick up, for example. Here's my shopping list, right? Sometimes, I don't know if it's in I don't know if it's in this one. One of these has a schedule that I think I wrote out for myself, like what I'm supposed to do at any given time of day. Give me a second to find that, because this is illustrative. It is definitely illustrative. Okay, I found it. That took a second. Yeah, I mean, I wrote out a schedule for different things I wanted to study over the course of a day, and I never followed this format again across any of these notebooks, but this worked. I stuck with it because I wrote it down once, I went back and I referenced it, and that was it. I didn't need to have 10 different kinds of bullets and have to go back and check a legend constantly to see what they meant. Like, oh, did I actually do this? Is this half done? Was this important or very important? None of that. I wrote it down. Because I wrote it down, I knew it was important enough that I needed to go back and review, and that was sufficient, right? Even the idea of making your notebooks these formal things like a commonplace book. There's a channel that was recommended to me quite a few times recently. I'm sure, again, nice fellow, I don't want to disparage him, fantastic handlebar mustache, but my guy, the whole thing with the commonplace book, it's not that complicated, right? I can write a quote in my notebook over here, and that's it. And I can still fill the rest with just my thoughts, with my shopping lists, with little doodles if I happen to, need to pass the time. I can put schedules in there. It's not about formalizing a system necessarily, right? You don't need to do that. You just need to transpose your stuff. And I think the big issue with this genre of notebook corn, it forces people into this weird kind of box where they say, okay, I have to have a journal for this and a journal for this. Here's my commonplace book, and here's my bullet journal, and again, here's my arrows journal, and here's my journal just for writing down thoughts or doing my creative writing. Like, stop. You can put it all in one book, especially when these systems are complex, like bullet journaling often tends to be, needlessly complex. What will often happen is that you'll be doing this, and then you'll break the system. You'll forget, you'll use the wrong kind of checkbox, whatever the case is. You'll forget to check stuff off in the specific way that the system wants you to. And when you go back, you say, oh, darn, like I dropped it. I should have been checking these off. And then you stop using the notebook. That actually happened to me. I did try a few years ago. There's a planner that I have back here where I tried to do bullet journaling, and the thing remains half unfinished because after a certain point, it was so tedious to go back and check things off and label things correctly. And I constantly had to go back and check, like, well, what does this actually mean? It stopped me from actually doing things. I spent probably more time than I needed to just plotting out the legend and trying to say, well, okay, how am I going to differentiate between my important or not very important or super important tasks? All of this stuff was pointless. It just distracts you from getting the stuff down on paper, right? Or when you say this absolutely has to be a commonplace book, well, what happens when your regular journal isn't on hand and you need to just write your thoughts out? You're in a bad mood and you just need to get the funk out of your head and onto the page. You're going to say, I can't put this in here. This is my commonplace book. It's only for collecting my quotes and reflecting specifically on those. So you miss the chance to write that thing down, and maybe it ends up mired in your head for a lot longer than it needs to be. Again, that's not the point. The point is just to remove as many barriers as possible between taking what is in your head and putting it on paper. Do whatever you want with these. Who cares? Who cares? You can always just start a new notebook. If you make a mess of things, it's fine. You're not being graded on these. No one's judging you. It's not show and tell. I don't need to flex, my collection of 100 different notebooks and commonplace books and all this kind of crap. I don't need to do that. I just need to keep them for myself. That's the point, right? And I think this is where we want to really get at the meat of why specifically you want to keep these, right? Now that you understand what notebook corn is and why it's stupid and terrible and cringe, really, 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 why is it important? Why am I even telling you to keep these when there are productivity apps available to you? And you could use, I guess Evernote's kind of like dead and useless now, but Notion is a big one that people are always pushing. I think there's Obsidian as well. Why would you go out of your way to use paper? Well, there's a couple practical reasons. First of all, you own this. You actually own these, right? So as I'm sure you guys have heard, a lot of people are finding that in Notion, for example, their notes get deleted unexpectedly. Evernote, stuff kind of went away because of what was going on with the company. I think they're Their profit model wasn't really well thought out, so over the years they kind of scaled back. They restricted access to notes, and this was something very frustrating for me because I used to use Evernote religiously while I was also using these. Lesson learned, or something like Obsidian that again is potentially needlessly complicated when a lot of the time you just need to write out a couple paragraphs, right? But this stuff you own. As long as I don't spill my coffee on it, and even if I do spill my coffee on it, as long as the ink doesn't bleed, it's kind of okay. As long as I don't set this on fire, lose it, drop it out, my window. As long as I don't do any of these things, I have my notes forever, right? Or at least as long as I'm alive and the thing doesn't disintegrate. I own them. I can carry them around. Nobody can spy on them unless they literally come into my space and peer at them. And then you know what? They're going to get knocked out if they're doing that. No one's going to come in and spy and modify my stuff and mess around with my things that way. It just doesn't happen. I can keep these and have access to them forever. The other thing, of course, is that I'm not constantly staring at a screen. And that honestly makes a big difference. I'm not typing into an impossibly small, little demonic black mirror and typing this stuff out. I can take my time, right? I don't constantly get distracted by things popping up on my screen or anything like that. I can just lay this out. I can take the 10 or 15 minutes, write myself a nice note, enjoy the process of writing the note as well, not click, 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 click. I like my handwriting. I think I happen to have decent handwriting. So I take my time and I consider my thoughts important enough that I want to write them out well. And it's a pleasurable experience. It's better than recording this thing on a phone and then having it be completely memory hold. And because actually I took the time to physically write it out and I put care into how I wrote it out, whatever I put in my journal is cemented in my mind, more so than whenever I fire up the Notes app or a to-do list app on the phone and write it down there. Usually I forget, right? I'll come back to these all the time and find checklists that I never went back to finish because, it was inconsequential, it was digital, it was annoying and tedious to write it down there, so I just didn't ever bother, right? It really isn't that complicated, guys. And again, don't worry about keeping systems, just do it however you want. I keep a lot of sketchbooks in the manner that Da Vinci did, where I have my sketches, there are notes next to them, sometimes there are notes literally written over my drawings. I've destroyed a perfectly good sketch because I really had to cram a thought in there. And it's okay. I don't get mad about that. I really don't get mad about it. It's just that is the purpose. I'm getting my creative notions out there, I'm getting an idea for a sketch or a character or whatever the thing might be onto the page, but I'm also writing the notes there and I'm letting them overlap and just be a big mess because that's how my brain works, because I'm a human being. I don't need to needlessly regulate myself in this way when I'm trying to just express my ideas and again, just commit them to memory, get them somewhere that I can reference them later. It's not necessary. I don't need a bazillion subfolders and, an index to categorize it all or anything like that. I don't. It's pleasurable to just flip through the thing sometimes and take a little time to find the note because I might stumble upon something else that I wrote and I get distracted for a moment and say, oh yeah, this is interesting. Why did I write that down too? And then come back to the thing that I was looking for. The whole act of it is just, it's more productive, it's healthier, it's better for the soul, quite frankly. So, hopefully, all of this has convinced you to never click on any bit of notebook corn ever again. Don't bother with these other videos. You literally only need one. It is as simple as this. Get yourself a notebook, write down your thoughts, stop using the damn phone, and for the love of God, do it as cheaply as possible. Okay? Ciao ragazzi.